My name is Jordan Weigand, and this is our national pastime, Tales of Old Time Baseball. This podcast is about exploring forgotten legends of the game, seasons of historic teams, rule changes and how they were received, and much more. I have been a baseball fan for my entire life. One of the earliest memories is walking into my living room and seeing my dad sitting on a small stool watching television. "What are you watching?" I had asked. He said, "Orioles baseball." I'm not sure how old I was, but I had to be younger than 6 because I remember watching those 96 and 97 Orioles teams. So baseball was my first love. History is another love of mine. I got my bachelor's degree in history, and I enjoy diving into the beginnings of baseball in any sport, really. Baseball is an easy sport to follow in old newspaper clippings, with the box score and summary providing great insight to each game, even as the games have changed. This project started about a year ago when I had a free trial to newspapers.com, not an ad. I was researching old Ironbirds games since minor league baseball website did not have old box scores prior to 2006. While having this trial, I decided, as I also have an interest in genealogy, to search my last name in the Baltimore region to find like obituaries, birth or wedding announcements of family members. What I hit on instead was a treasure trove of articles about the forgotten ball player we are featuring today. As of this recording, I have no tangible proof that we are related, but it was still awesome seeing my uncommon last name in the headlines. Today, we jump into our time machines and go back to 1903 to Curtis Weigand's Wild Week. At this time, Curtis Weigand was the captain of the Penn Park Baseball Club in York, Pennsylvania. Penn Park was an independent ball club not affiliated with any of the major or minor leagues. They played in the Pennsylvania State League until 1904, when they then joined the Tri-State League. Weigand signed with them at the end of March and was playing by the end of April for opening day. Not only was he given the nickname Captain Weigand, he was also very well known in baseball circles as being one of the best independent ball players in the region. So much so that Connie Mack tried to sign him to the Philadelphia Athletics during the season, but Curt declined, stating he didn't want to play in the big leagues, but he would rather stay playing independent ball. A couple of the months into the season, things changed. In the offseason, Weigand had originally signed a contract with the Baltimore Eastern League Club, which was nicknamed the Orioles. According in the York Gazette and the Baltimore Evening News, Weigand was one of the first to sign for a contract this season, but he had several reasons for not reporting. Meanwhile, baseball and Baltimore was a winning combination. From 1892 to 1899, the Baltimore Orioles were in the National League. They won 3 straight National League pennants from 1894 to 1896, with 2 Temple Cups from 1896 and 1897. They produced such Hall of Famers as Ned Hanlon, Wilbert Robinson, Dan Browthers, Huey Jennings, Wee Willie Keeler, John McGraw, and Joe Kelly. The club folded when the league contracted from 12 teams to 8 teams, with a few players moving to the Brooklyn Superbas, which would later be known as the Dodgers. Then in 1901, a new Orioles club formed in the American League. This club lasted 2 years before also moving to New York to become the Highlanders, later known as the Yankees. After the American League Ball Club moved to New York, it opened up a pathway for Ned Hanlon to purchase the ballpark and the Montreal Eastern League Club, moving them to Baltimore for the 1903 season. On June 21st, 1903, the York Gazette ran an article called "Weigand Quits Penn Park." This piece states that Weigand would no longer feature for Penn Park as he was under contract with Baltimore, and the manager, Wilbert Robinson, had contacted Weigand via a peremptory notice to report to the team. The next day, the Baltimore Sun ran a story called "Strongest Team in Eastern League with Weigand at Short." This article has quotes from Ned Hanlon stating that the team, with addition to Weigand, was, quote, "as good as any aggregation of players as there is in any team in the league," end quote. It seemed this would turn the season around for the Orioles.
Going into the season, expectations were high for this Baltimore club. Their player manager was Wilbert Robinson, who had been part of the late 90s Orioles teams that were perennial winners. Ned Hanlon was owner of the club, who had also had a history of playing and managing in Baltimore, so what could go wrong? On opening day, April 30th, 1903, the Orioles played their first game of the season in front of over 8,000 spectators. Here's a quote from the Baltimore Sun. "There was no man, woman, or child there who is not convinced that he, she, or it would behold the pennant floating serenely over Oriole Park after the close of the present season." Baltimore Sun, May 1st, 1903. The expectations for the club were sky high, pennant or bust, but the Orioles lost that first game to Buffalo by the score of 7-3. The season continued to disappoint, and by May 29th, the Orioles sat fifth out of eighth place in the league with an 11-14 record on the season. When Weigand joined the club in late June, the Orioles were still fifth and a few games back from 500. Robinson and Hanlon were hoping Weigand could give them some life, and that he did. Weigand hit the ground running in his first game of the season on June 24th against Jersey City. Curt went 3 for 4 with a single, a double, a triple, a stolen base, and scoring the only 2 runs for Baltimore in a 9-2 loss. This was the first article I found in my research, and it was headlined as Weigand's Fine Baseball. He was an immediate fan favorite. The team was quoted in the paper, "The Orioles are far from discouraged. They say that with a little better acquaintanceship, they will still land at or near the top of the list." This was an optimistic view, as at the end of the game, they still sat fifth with a 21-25 record and about 10 wins off the pace of first-place Buffalo. Weigand continued to hit well for the club in his next couple of games against Providence. He went 3 for 7 in 2 games with 2 singles, a triple, scoring another 2 runs and stealing another 2 bases, and the Orioles were winning. They took those 2 games against Providence, winning 11-3 in Game 1 and 5-2 in Game 2. They were now 23-25 on a modest 2-game win streak, and things seemed to be looking up. Though on June 27th, the York Dispatch ran an article headline simply as "Weigand dissatisfied." Here is a quote snippet from the article. "Although Curt Weigand is playing great ball with the Baltimore Eastern League team, he is far from being satisfied in that place and desires to return to York." The day that article ran was the last game Curtis Weigand would suit up for the Baltimore Orioles. In that last game against Providence, the Orioles would lose, and Weigand offensively would go 1 for 5 with a triple, a run scored, and a run batted in. Defensively, he had 2 of the team's 7 errors. It was his worst performance in the Eastern League. On June 29th, Weigand quit the club and went back home to Chester, Pennsylvania. According to the Evening Journal in Wilmington, he gave as an excuse that he had been harshly criticized by a Baltimore paper, was not well received in consequence by the spectators at Oriole Park. He claimed to have no fault to find with the management or his fellow players. That's a quote again from the Evening Journal in Wilmington, Delaware. This article was quite perplexing and sent me down a rabbit hole looking for any negative newspaper articles about Weigand that would come from a Baltimore paper. All the articles I had found sent praise towards Weigand and his ball skills. Weigand's Fine Baseball, strongest team in Eastern League with Weigand at short. But I think I may have finally found what he was referring to. In the June 24th edition of the York Gazette, they ran a snippet from a Baltimore paper called the Baltimore News, and it was from their June 23rd edition. The article is definitely less favorable to Weigand and ran the day before his first game against Jersey City. Quote, "Weigand is not making a favorable impression by his action since he condescended to sign an Oriole contract some months ago, and he will have to play very good ball indeed if he wants to overcome the handicap he has put upon himself." Judging from his actions, he seemed to not only have light regard for his written contract to do certain things, but his promises seem to also be made with the mental reservation, if it suits me. He was induced to come to Baltimore on last Sunday afternoon upon the payment of his expenses by the Baltimore club, and he allowed Treasurer Allball to pay him a good-sized banknote in the way of advance money. In return, he promised faithfully to report at Oriole Park in time to engage in the practice yesterday morning. Instead of coming, Weigand sent a telegram at 2 o'clock in the afternoon saying that he had concluded to wait until today before reporting. Did this article actually sour Weigand enough to leave? Were there other articles I've not been able to find? Or is this an excuse because he seemingly never wanted to be in Baltimore anyway? In the Baltimore Sun article about his desertion, it mentions that Weigand has played good ball and was receiving a handsome increase over salary he had originally agreed to come here for. The excuses he gave for desertion were discredited. End quote. It also states he denied he was going back to York, but the Orioles believed that was where he was going to end up. Another interesting quote is this, quote, Weigand says he does not have to play ball for a living. It was shown to him that he could never play again on a club in the national agreement, as his services were bound to the Baltimore club by his signed contract, end quote. Weigand would go on to say that it did not bother him. The paper, the Baltimore World, was not pleased with Weigand's departure. The departure of these two players leaves the club open to criticism. The management is eager to rush into print and exploit on the glorious future of the team. Even now, they are shouting from the housetops that two crack players are being angled for. This does not explain why two heavy hitters are allowed to go. Weigand is vastly of more value than Green, and with the stick, he is the best on the team. He had never failed to make at least one hit in a game, and usually he has 2 or 3 to his credit. The fans should denounce such proceedings and demand in no uncertain terms Weigand, at least, should be kept at all hazards. End quote. 2 days after his last game for Baltimore, an article ran from the York Dispatch titled, All Hail Weigand to Play with York. Weigand, after all, was returning to Penn Park and would feature in their next game on June 30th. On the 30th, the York Gazette reported that Penn Park had purchased Weigand's release and confirmed the return of the captain. During the game, when Weigand came up to bat in the second inning, Bill Gefkin presented Weigand with an umbrella and a bouquet of flowers. And that so ends Curtis Weigand's wild week. From June 21st to June 29th, he went from Penn Park to the Baltimore Orioles and then back to Penn Park. But that wasn't the last club Weigand would play for in 1903. Later in the season, Weigand forces his way out of Penn Park to play for Williamsport. On September 5th, 1903, the York Dispatch reported that Weigand would leave and asked the manager Heckert for his release, which at first Heckert refused before conceding. Weigand's excuse for leaving York was once again that the local players had been treating him too harshly and were too critical of his play. Weigand finished the season with Williamsport batting .250 in 26 games and 96 at-bats. He had 9 doubles, 42 total bases, 3 sacrifice hits, and 7 stolen bases. In the 4 games he played with the Baltimore Orioles, he was batting .438 in 16 at-bats with 3 singles, a double, 3 triples, and 3 stolen bases. The Orioles would finish the season 71-54 and in 4th place of the Eastern League, and Penn Park finished 77-57 on the season. And of course, in the major leagues, the first ever World Series in 1903 took place in the fall with the Boston Americans beating the Pittsburgh Pirates 5-3. Thank you all for listening along. You may be asking, why did this story jump out to me so strongly? Well, there are a few personal ties here for me. One, the obvious and aforementioned last name. While I spell it W-I-E-G-A-N-D, the articles here jump around from W-I-E and W-E-I. I know a few W-E-I Weigands as well, and it is a common misspelling of my name when people are spelling my name wrong. 2, I am from Maryland, and I am a Baltimore Orioles fan. fan. So seeing a player with my last name playing for a club that I am a fan of, that I go to games of, was a great surprise, even if it was only for 4 games. Funnily enough, Baseball Reference, while it does have a page for Curt, does not have any record of his teams from 1903. Curt also played shortstop, while I love playing second base. 3, Curtis is from Chester, Pennsylvania, and a fun tie-in with this is that the MLS Major League Soccer team I follow, the Philadelphia Union, play their games in Chester. 4, he played for York, which is close enough for me that I'd been in the area to shop a bit. The Orioles actually used to also have a merchandise store in the York Galleria Mall. And there's also another connection here because Orioles legend Brooks Robinson co-founded the York Revolution, who currently play in the Independent League, the Atlantic League of professional baseball. So just a lot of ties of this regional area that I grew up in, and just really cool to have this story kind of fall into my lap through looking through old newspapers. And I had a really fun time researching it. I'm looking at researching other stories for the podcast and this YouTube channel as well. So hopefully if you enjoyed stuff like this, you can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening audibly, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Find us there, follow along. If you have any interesting stories, or if you know anything about Curtis Weigand, or anybody in this regional area that you would like to shine a light on, feel free to contact me for me to look into it. I think that would be really cool, especially if you are somebody that knows something about Curtis Weigand, about his life. I have a couple more, I think, stories about him that I want to share, but I think I kind of want to spread those out and start with, because this video kind of started out of his whole life. Oh, it started out as the week, and then I learned so much about him and started flowing into being about his life, and then I was hitting such a wall with writing that story, so I changed it back to being a week, and I was able to actually write this script pretty well, being focused again on 1 week with all the sources I have. But I'm always looking for more information about Curtis and his life and his family. So if you have anything about that, feel free to reach out to me. If we also find a way to get Baseball Reference updated with some of these 1903 stats, like I have some stat sheets of him from 1903 as well. But yeah, so thank you. I just really love baseball. I really love history. So mixing these two together was such a fun story for me. I am working on my next couple scripts for the next few episodes. I don't know how long those will take me to make, but hopefully not a year like this one. Thank you all once again. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.